World War I and the Great Depression 1907-18. U.S. intervenes in World War I, but rejects membership of League of Nations in its aftermath. 1920. Women given the right to vote under the 19th Amendment. 1920. Sale and manufacture of alcoholic liquor outlawed. The Prohibition era sees a mushrooming of illegal drinking joints, home-produced alcohol, and gangsterism. 1924. Congress gives indigenous people right to citizenship. 1929-33. More than 13 million people are unemployed after the Wall Street stock market crash of 1929 triggers the Great Depression. President Herbert Hoover rejects direct federal relief. 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt launches New Deal recovery program, which includes major public works. Sale of alcohol resumes. World War II and the Cold War. 1941, Japanese warplanes attack U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, leading to U.S. joining World War II against the Axis powers. 1945, U.S. drops 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrenders. 1947, U.S. enunciates policy of aid for nations it deems threatened by communism in what became known as the Truman Doctrine. Cold War with Soviet Union begins. 1948, America's program to revive ailing post-war European economies, the Marshall Plan, comes into force. Some $13 billion is dispersed over 4 years, and the plan is regarded as a success. 1950-54, Senator Joseph McCarthy carries out a crusade against alleged communists in government and public life. The campaign and its methods become known as McCarthyism. In 1954, McCarthy is formally censured by the Senate. Desegregation in the Vietnam War. 1954, racial segregation in schools becomes unconstitutional. Start of campaign of civil disobedience to secure civil rights for Americans of African descent. 1960, Democratic Party candidate John F. Kennedy elected president, narrowly defeating his rival Richard Nixon. 1961, Bay of Pigs invasion, an unsuccessful attempt to invade Cuba by Cuban exiles, organized and financed by Washington. 1962, U.S. compels Soviet Union to withdraw nuclear weapons from Cuba in what has become known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. 1963, President John F. Kennedy assassinated, Lyndon Johnson becomes president. 1964, U.S. steps up its military intervention in Vietnam. Civil Rights Act signed into law. It aims to halt discrimination on grounds of race, color, religion, nationality. 1968, Black civil rights leader Martin Luther King assassinated. 1969, Republican Party candidate Richard Nixon elected president amid growing public opposition to Vietnam War. U.S. military presence in Vietnam exceeds 500,000 personnel. U.S. astronaut Neil Armstrong becomes the first person to walk on the moon. 1972, Nixon re-elected and makes historic visit to China that leads to recognition of the communist government. 1973, Vietnam ceasefire agreement signed. The campaign had claimed some 58,000 American lives. 1974, President Nixon resigns in the Watergate scandal over a 1972 break-in at the Democratic Party headquarters. 1976, Democratic Party candidate Jimmy Carter elected president. 1979, U.S. Embassy in Tehran, Iran, seized by radical students. The Clinton years. 1992, Democratic Party candidate Bill Clinton elected president. 1992, Congress passes North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, intended to create free trade bloc among U.S., Canada, and Mexico. 1995, Oklahoma bomb by far-right activists kills more than 160 people in worst ever incident of its kind in U.S. 11th of September attacks. 2001, 11th September. Coordinated suicide attacks by Al-Qaeda terror group prompts the U.S. to embark on a war on terror that includes invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq. 2001 October, U.S. leads massive campaign of airstrikes against Afghanistan and helps opposition forces defeat the Taliban regime. 2002 November, President Bush signs into law a bill creating a Department of Homeland Security, the biggest reorganization of federal government in more than 50 years. 2003 February, Space Shuttle Columbia's 28th mission ends in tragedy when the craft breaks up while re-entering the atmosphere. The 7 astronauts on board are killed. Iraq War. 2003 March. Missile attacks on Baghdad marked the start of a U.S.-led campaign to topple the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. U.S. forces advance into central Baghdad in early April. 2004 May, furor over pictures showing the abuse of Iraqi prisoners in U.S. custody. 2005 August, hundreds of people are killed when Hurricane Katrina, the most destructive storm to hit the U.S. in decades, sweeps through Gulf Coast states. Much of the city of New Orleans is submerged by floodwaters. 2006 March, Congress renews the USA Patriot Act, a centerpiece of the government's fight against terrorism. After months of debate about its impact on civil liberties, the government agrees to some curbs on information gathering. 2007 January, President Bush announces a new Iraq strategy. Thousands more U.S. troops will be dispatched to shore up security in Baghdad. 2008 September, turmoil in the U.S. and international financial markets as major Wall Street investment bank Lehman Brothers collapses and other big U.S. financial players face growing troubles as a result of the credit crunch. 2008 November, Democratic Senator Barack Obama becomes the first black president of the United States. 2010 March, Democrats in Congress succeed in passing a bill on healthcare reform, despite strong Republican opposition. 2011 May, U.S. forces kill al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden in an operation in the Pakistani city of Abbottabad. 2012 September, the U.S. ambassador in Libya is killed when armed men storm the consulate in Benghazi. 2013 April, twin bomb blasts targeting the Boston Marathon kill 3 people and injure more than 170. 2015 March, President Obama announces that 10,000 U.S. troops will remain in Afghanistan as advisors and trainers until 2016. 2016 November, Republican candidate Donald Trump wins presidential election, defeating Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton in one of the biggest political upsets in U.S. history. He is inaugurated in January. 2017 January, President Trump signs executive orders restricting visas for people seeking to enter the U.S. from certain Muslim-majority countries and barring funding for cities that shelter illegal immigrants. Both policies are blocked by the courts. 2018 June, after months of hostile rhetoric, President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un meet in Singapore and agree to continue dialogue aimed at reducing tensions on the Korean peninsula. 2020 March, national emergency declared over the COVID-19 pandemic. 2021 January, Joe Biden inaugurated president amid unprecedented security, a week after Trump supporters stormed the Capitol in Washington, D.C.